I probably with Shabeen, there was a part of me that was, I truly believe that for it to work, the experience had to be so good that it didn't matter whether we gave money away or not. And we do apply that same lens to Who Gives a Crap. We just need to deliver a customer experience that's several factors better than what you get if you're buying supermarket product of, someone else's brand. And so with Shabeen, I think I lent into that idea of the experience needing to be so good regardless of the purpose that we probably didn't play on the purpose to all of its strengths. And I don't think purpose-led brands should only play into their purpose. It creates one-dimensional brands, and we think brands should be like people that have several different aspects to their personality, and you can discover that about them over time. And they, yes, care about the world or the environment or both, but they also know when to tell a great joke, and you like the way they look, and they have a funny sense of dress, whatever it is. And so with Shabeen, I think we were so focused on getting the customer experience really great that we probably underplayed purpose, and probably most importantly with our team, where I think, now we might talk about this later, but when we think about culture, we think about the three pillars of that being autonomy, where we're setting clear goals for people, mastery, where people are, setting clear goals and then getting out of their way to allow them to achieve them, mastery, where people are working on a course, get a set of skills they want to master themselves, and purpose, where they know that the work they're doing today ladders up to the greater good that we're trying to achieve together. And with Shabeen, we had tons of autonomy, we had tons of mastery, but we didn't nail the purpose piece. We didn't sort of, do our monthly all hands and say, hey guys, the reason why we're here is to try and prove this business model out and to try and send as much money as we can out to these organizations. And here's some of the impact that we've been able to have to date. Here's hearing from our partners with an update on what we've been able to do, or, what we're going to try and fund next. So we could have done a better job of figuring out how to, I think in Y Combinator, they call this mission to metrics, how to connect the mission of the organization into the metrics that are driving the organization every single day. And so if we could have done that really well, we could have showed every staff member how, the impact of every drink that they were selling and what that looked like at the end of the financial year, and figured out a way to kind of quantify that in the number of shifts that they do, or, the role they're playing in the business. And so I think I probably learned a lot more about that by getting it wrong and realizing that there was so much more potential than what we were able to unleash with that business when it came to leading a team with that purpose behind it.
Mm. Yeah, I love the Y Combinator, and Paul Graham is, I read his stuff all the time. I think his maker versus manager article is one of the best things I've ever written, or I've ever read. It's so good. In terms of this mission to metrics thing, how do you do that? Because there'll be people listening to this who have a purpose-led brand, or not necessarily a purpose-led brand, but like a vision. And I always find it's like, how do you get the vision that's in the founder's soul, or the purpose that's in the founder's soul, and get that to kind of spread through the organization? But like, how are you specifically doing that on like a monthly basis, maybe?
Yeah. So what we do at Who Gives a Crap is, and again, we didn't get this right first time around. It took a few years of sort of to figure it all out. But as the team got bigger, when the team's small, that purpose is sort of implicit and ingrained. It's part of the story of who you all are. As the team gets bigger, you have to find ways to make it explicit to create the space for people to rally around it. And we sort of followed, partly what Phil Collins talks about in one of his books, Good to Great, where you have a big, hairy, audacious goal, or a BHAG, that is, audacious because it's really hard to achieve. You have to really kind of crush it, many, many times over for 30 years to get to where you're trying to go to. And so for us, we realized a few years in that we needed to have that BHAG to anchor people around it. And so for us, that's making sure everyone in the world has access to clean water and a toilet by 2050. So we've got, 27 years to try and close the gap on the many billions of people that don't have access to sanitation today. And that's the goal that everyone in our team kind of really rallies around. But that's hard to quantify in terms of, how is me helping this customer with this order laddering up to that BHAG? And so what we do is we take it down to a 5-year view and say, well, if we extrapolate out where we are today to where we're trying to get to in 30 years' time, in 5 years' time, we have to be here. And that means that we're a business that's this big doing these things, and we're making donations of about this much money. And so we start to use our donations as the driver to tell us where we're trying to get to in order to solve this huge problem that we have in the world. And then from there, we come down to 1 year and say, well, if we're trying to get to this, this place in 5 years' time, it means that this year we have to do this thing and the business needs to get to this stage. We want our donations to be this big. And then we get down to a quarterly level. That means that this quarter, every team are trying to do these core things. And this is how the role of each individual person in that team ultimately enables us to achieve the things that we're doing this quarter. So we start to really tie into, what each individual person is doing this quarter to help us get to that 30-year view, but we thread it together with a 1 year, a 5-year, and then the 30-year view at the end.
Yeah, it's always there's like the principal agent problem, which is the bigger you get, the further away the employees are from the principal, i.e. you. Like, it's always the hardest thing of how do you get them to buy into the mission and the culture. And what you've said there about this Zoom, like taking the 27-year project almost, or mission, and boiling it down, I think there's real value in that for people listening. What I know, before we hit record, we talked about like your childhood. You were born in the UK and then moved to Oz when you were like 4 years old. I'd love to know, when was the first time you realized in your, like, maybe from like 5 to 16 or 20, that you realized, like, okay, I am philanthropic, or my why is to do something bigger for the world? When did that first begin to bubble in you?
I think it for me, it was actually relatively late. So the thing that was always intrinsic in me was the entrepreneurial nature. I was that kid that put flyers in everyone's mailbox to try and like pet sit their animals for them when they were away. I made stuff and sold it to kids at school, and was kind of always trying to figure out like, what that entrepreneurial nature looks like. But through that journey, the idea of kind of taking something that I'd made and I knew how much it cost and selling it to someone for more money than what it cost me, that felt a bit kind of icky and gross. And I could never quite figure out why. And I think when I was growing up, business people weren't painted well. Entrepreneurs weren't painted well.